what would the title be of your last lecture other than hopefully not my last lecture, because I want to keep lecturing. I want to keep teaching for a long time. Teaching is one of the joys of my life. And I'm Carey Nachenberg. So without further ado, let's continue. So who am I? Well, many of my students know me, but a lot of you are not former students. And so I think I'll share with you a little bit about myself. I was born in 1971. Strangely enough, I had no hair at that time, but so I guess I'm more like a baby now than I was in my earlier years. 1993, I was at UCLA. This is me on the left. I did have hair in the middle, I think, and that's me with my friend Jason Robbins, who actually works at Google now. And I went to school here at UCLA from 1989 through 1995. So that was exciting. And now this is me today. I actually work at Lyft Level 5 Autonomy, which is the autonomous vehicle division at Lyft, after a long career doing cybersecurity, working on things like Norton antivirus. So let me tell you a little bit about what makes me tick, okay? I'm a software engineer. I enjoy programming. I'm a part-time professor. I volunteer my time 1 quarter a year. I'm a rock climber. That's something that gives me a huge amount of joy, which I'll talk about. An author, which I'll tell you about later, and a very, very silly person. And hopefully you can tell that by my shirt. Yeah, you'll see. Okay, so what are a few things that bring me joy? I'm all about the little things. I like experiencing joy in life day to day, because for me, that's what really brings me happiness. I love going to Del Taco with friends and just eating 6 tacos with about 5 medium hot sauce packets on each taco. It's fantastic. I love rock climbing. That's my friend Macon on the right and me on the left there, climbing at the Planet of the Apes wall out at Malibu Creek. I love teaching. Teaching brings me so much joy, just helping students and so on. This is a little bit embarrassing, but I do enjoy playing hide and go seek. I've had epic games during New Year's Eve parties. Normally I hide a little bit better than this, but you get the idea. And then my friends bring me so much joy. I have very, very close friends and I'm blessed. And so these are, hopefully you get to know a little bit more about who I am. All right. So what would you talk about? And I gave this a lot of thought, and you have to think about this before you give this talk, if this were your last lecture. So, I was thinking if I was going to die soon and I had to impart whatever wisdom I have on people, what would I talk about? And obviously being happy, how I found happiness in my life, how to find meaning in life, super important. Maybe how to find success. And success is not always defined by financial success, but just by achieving the things you want to achieve. And of course, talking about Cardi B deleting her Twitter account would be definitely not on that list. But I want to talk about the first 3 today. And the outcome I'm hoping to achieve today is that you leave with a smile and that you learn a couple things, at least how I live my life, that might help you live your life a little bit better, especially for my students who are out there who are, just starting their lives and just, going to go out into the real world and get jobs and stuff. So hopefully this gives you a little perspective to who I am and also helps you a little bit. All right, so let's continue. So here's something that's probably no doubt to everybody here, but life is difficult. Life is difficult for everyone I know well. It's difficult for me. I've had my challenges in life. Even recently, feeling like an imposter. I currently feel like an imposter at work. I'll just be honest. I've switched fields. I'm learning tons of stuff, but it's difficult. And sometimes I wonder, am I really cut out for this? And I have to say, if you're growing in life, if you're challenging yourself, you will never not feel like an imposter. There's always going to be a time where you're saying, am I really able to do this? Am I good enough to do this? So this never goes away. Knowing the right thing to do. I worked with a number of CEOs at former companies, and you think after 30 years of training in an MBA and a degree from Harvard or somewhere else that you would know the right thing to do as, let's say, a CEO or a leader in high tech. People all the time do the wrong thing. It's just always difficult to know the right thing to do. Life is very complex and it's super stressful. It never goes away. Relationships, health challenges. work challenges, learning new things. It only gets harder to learn new things when you get older. These challenges impact everybody. And of course, finding your purpose. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But that's been something that actually, it's been a challenge for me in my life. And I found some ways to help with that, and I want to share them with you. So I don't care if you're young or old. I don't care if you're rich or poor, if you're brilliant or the average Joe, or if you're famous or just the average person that nobody knows. Life is pretty difficult. In fact, probably more difficult for some of the famous people based on what we've heard recently. And I love this quote from Helen Solushkin, who's just a regular person, an everyday person. She thinks she's passed away now, but the quote is, "The only happy people are people I don't know well." So basically what this says is that if you don't know somebody well, their life may seem happy on Instagram or Facebook. But when you get to know them, you realize that everybody faces challenges. And so this talk is about helping you understand at least how I've tackled these challenges, and maybe it'll help you be a little happier and more fulfilled as well. So today I want to discuss 5 actions, and I added the S there. It didn't come with the graphic there. Okay. I added some value there that have made my life a little bit better, and hopefully might make your life better too. Now, I want to say 2 things about this. First of all, I'm not suggesting these things will make everybody's life better. These just happen to make my life better, and I think they might help other people, so I want to share them. And second of all, these are things you can do, not who you are. You don't have to be brilliant to do these things. You don't have to be anything. You just have to try practicing a new behavior, and that's why I like them. All right, so let's just do it. Let's jump in and talk about these things. So action number 1 is create meaningful friendships. This one is an important one for me. That is me on the right-hand side. This is our dorm room in Sproul Hall. That's Robbie on the left there. We were roommates my 3rd year. It was finals week, and we wanted to cover the windows so that no light would get in so we could sleep in. And so this is sort of what we came up with. So there you go. And Robbie's a lifelong friend. We still keep in touch today. All right. So building deep relationships has been a real joy in my life. I've cultivated a group of friends who accept me, faults and all, and I got plenty of faults. I have lots of faults, who I can say anything to. I can tell my friends anything, and who I can ask for advice on any topic. I'm very lucky, and I know I'm blessed because not everybody has friends like this. And so it's been very important to my life. Now, the question is it lucky that I have these friends, or can this be learned? Can you learn to make new friends? And I think that many people can learn to make new friends. And so I want to tell you about what I've done, and has worked for a bunch of my friends actually, who also built stronger relationships. And maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't, but maybe give it a try. So here's what worked for me. And they normally say don't try this at home, but I think you should definitely try this at home. Let's see. So the first thing is, and people who know me will know this about me, I love asking, meaningful questions. So I love sitting down with somebody who I don't know, or even people I do know very well, and asking questions like, what makes you happiest in life? Or what are you most afraid of? How do you hold yourself back the most? I love asking questions like this because if people are willing to open up, you can really learn about them. These are not superficial questions. And sometimes I'll even ask Lyft drivers, Uber drivers, these questions, and you'd be surprised, people will answer sometimes. And so this is one thing I try to do, especially with close friends, but with anybody really. Now, the second thing is that I try to practice vulnerability. So what do I mean by that? Here's a great quote by Brene Brown, which is, the definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Basically, you're putting yourself out there. You're sharing things with people that you may not want them to know because it feels, like you might be judged or feel weak about those things. And what Brene says is that vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. And I happen to agree with this 100%, 100%. So if I ask a question like, what holds you back most in life? I'm willing to share my own honest answer. And if being vulnerable seems uncomfortable to you, I have to say, it was. It was when I first started. I revealed things about me that probably most people wouldn't want to share about themselves. And at first it was really, really uncomfortable. But what I found is that sharing your failures in life, the problems you've had, and believe me, recently I've had some failures that look like that, where I was doing really well and then boom, hit some troubles. Sharing those things and telling other people how you're feeling and how it's affecting you. Talking about, your inadequacies and insecurities and deficiencies and what you think, is bad about you and your fears. I found that sharing those things makes other people feel more comfortable about opening up too. And you would be surprised how many things people share in common when you open up to them and show them that you have those same problems. So give it a try. Ask people meaningful questions. Be willing to be vulnerable and share with them and see what happens. And you know what? It's not going to work for everybody, but for me and for many of my friends who have tried this, they've been surprised at how this has really impacted their friendships and made much deeper relationships. You might ask, what if people judge me or think lesser of me because I just told them something that's super embarrassing or think I'm a freak? I think people think I'm a freak anyway, so let's forget about that last one. But what if people think lesser of me for these things? Well, it happens far less often than you think. I think you'd be really surprised because everybody's struggling with life challenges like the ones we talked about at the beginning of the talk. I think what you'll find is that when you open up, it creates the space for them to open up too. And I believe this from the bottom of my heart. I can't stress this enough. I've literally had conversations with people in cars during rides where they've told me their life story by just opening up to them and sharing with them. And so if you can do that with a stranger, you can do it with a close friend, and the relationships you will build will be wonderful. So just one thing to think about. All right, let's keep going. Action number 2, create meaning in your life. Now that may sound like an oxymoron. How do you create meaning? Don't you have to find your purpose or something? I don't know. Let's talk about that. So when you're young, and when I was in college, I had things like graduation that gave me purpose and meaning, right? Everything I did was about graduating so I could just finish college, finish school, start working, for instance, landing my first job. That gives you meaning, right? You're thinking about it. You're preparing for interviews. You're trying to, get that first job, or maybe buying even your first house, moving out, These are all things that give people, especially younger people, meaning in their life. But somewhere along the way, many of us, including me, get lost and we wonder if there's something bigger in life, right? Because once you've achieved a bunch of things and you said, well, I've jumped that hurdle, I graduated, I got the job, I got promoted, I made a certain amount of money, I can buy a house now. Then now what? What's going to give me meaning now in my life? And it's a question that many people ask. They ask things like, what is the meaning of life? And maybe many of you are asking this question too. And I did as well in school, but I've done a lot more since. I had, you might call it midlife crisis, trying to figure out where's the purpose in my life? Why am I here? How am I going to make the world better? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. So I hope you don't have to cope with this, but many people do, and I did and do. So I think a lot of people struggle with this at some point in their life. And I have to tell you, it's not pleasant. I mean, it makes you a little depressed, a little sad. Like, why am I here? It's difficult. So the question is there a solution? And you, like, for me to go and say, hey, of course there's a solution to finding meaning, wouldn't that be like the Holy Grail to find that? It would be, but I think there is a solution. So I'd like to talk about this guy. This is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl has passed away now, but he was actually a victim in the Nazi concentration camps in Auschwitz. And Viktor Frankl was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I guess you would say. And what he noticed in the concentration camps is that people who lacked meaning actually did much worse. They couldn't keep up the will to live. They would die much more quickly. But people who found meaning in their lives were able to survive, assuming they weren't killed. They were able to survive through the end of the war and make it out. And Viktor Frankl basically came up with a whole branch of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which is about giving people meaning in their life and having that meaning help them be happy and live healthier lives. Because people can't live without meaning. It's very difficult for people to live a happy life without meaning. And this is what he focused his life on after he got out of the concentration camps. Now, Viktor Frankl actually said something very interesting, because I used to ask myself, what's the meaning of life? There's got to be a meaning of life. And what Viktor Frankl said is something a little bit different. He said, look, the meaning of life differs from person to person, from day to day, and from hour to hour. What matters is not the meaning of life in general, because there is no meaning of life that is perfect for everybody, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment, in a given circumstance. What he would say is, and he actually did say something like this, is you can't ask a chess master, what's the perfect move in chess? Because a perfect move in chess depends on the chessboard you're playing and the opponent you're playing and how they play their game. And what Viktor Frankl would say, I think, is that you have to create a meaning for yourself, create meaning at different points in your life, and that meaning will differ. And it might just be graduating, and it might just be getting through a disease that you're going through, and it might be taking care of a family member to make their life a little bit easier, and so on. But what Viktor Frankl essentially said is that you have to create meaning, and it's circumstantial again. But you know what? In my opinion, my humble opinion, Viktor didn't get it quite right. Viktor said you have to, meaning is different for everybody, and it's circumstantial. I don't think he got it quite right. I think he's right, but I think there's more to it. I think there is something you can do throughout your life to always give yourself meaning. So wouldn't that be wonderful if I could give you the secret of finding meaning for yourself that always works? It's not going to be perfect, but better than nothing. So let me share it with you. Every day, try to make another person's life just a little bit better. So I want to share with you a couple stories from my life about people who have made my life better, in cases where I've seen them making other people's lives better, and explain to you why I think this gives meaning. So this is really easy to do, and it's amazing. So first of all, practice small gestures of kindness. This is something I try to do all the time, and I want to tell you a little bit of story about my time when I was at Symantec, the makers of Norton, way back when. So every day I go into the office, and there was a guy named Tracy, one of the guards, that would sit at the front desk. And the moment I would walk in the door, Tracy would give me this beaming smile, just a really genuine smile, and ask me how I was doing. And I remember today, as I was writing this talk, not today, but a couple of weeks ago, I was writing the talk, how nice that smile made me feel. I thought, he just smiled at me, but it warmed up my day. It was just great. And occasionally I see him in a restaurant and I just say hi. It just makes me so happy to see him. I practice this as well. I remember at the Google cafeteria before I moved to Lyft, I would just smile at the staff there and say hi and ask them how they were doing. And sometimes they'd even answer, and I would listen. I would spend some time and just talk to them. And I remember we moved buildings, and they heard that we were moving buildings, and one of them came up to me and said, "We're going to miss your smile." It really sort of brightened our day. Smiling at somebody, opening a door for somebody, asking them how they're doing, and actually paying attention, you don't know how much this can impact people and make them a little bit happier. And by the way, as we'll talk about, it will give you meaning as well. Here's another one: expressing gratitude. So this is an email I get, one of these every couple months, I'd say, from a student who basically said, "Thank you for posting your slides online. It helped me study and get a job." Now, I got to tell you, when I get an email like this as a recipient, where somebody's expressing gratitude to me, it makes me feel like my life is a little bit better. I did something that was worthwhile. I helped people. I made the world a little bit better. But it's also the case that when you express gratitude to other people, you actually feel better about yourself, and you feel more meaning and happiness as well, because you realize how lucky you are. And they've done studies on this. We'll talk about it, but they've done studies on this. So just expressing gratitude to somebody, saying, thank you, this food is really good. I really enjoyed that lecture. Those kinds of things can make another person's life a little bit better and also make yours more meaningful. Here's a big one. Listening empathetically. We talked about life being difficult and how everybody's got problems. Sometimes just sitting down and asking people how they are, when they say, I'm okay. And normally you just might pass that up and say, oh, I'm glad you're okay. But if you really listen and say, oh, what's going on? And you empathize, you make sure that they know you're with them and that you hear them and you understand where they're coming from, that can make all the difference in somebody's day. And it will make their life a little bit easier. And again, when you help somebody, it makes your life more meaningful as well. I got to tell you, these are like, you do these over and over again, every time it's going to feel like you're bringing yourself happiness and meaning. And finally, volunteering. I volunteered, haven't done it last couple of years, but at a camp called Camp del Corazon. And Camp del Corazon is a camp for kids with heart disease. And these are kids who, by the time they're 10, 12 years old, have had multiple surgeries for their heart. It's tough growing up as a kid, suffering with these things. And these kids often don't get to experience the same things that kids without these problems would be able to experience in day camp and so on. And so Camp del Corazon is a camp on Catalina Island where the kids just get to go with people like themselves who have also had these surgeries. They don't have to feel embarrassed or anything about any scars or anything, and they just have a great time. They rock climb, they go swimming, they do archery, they get to do all the camp stuff that you'd want to do. And I got to tell you, volunteering has changed my life. It just makes it's so nice to help a child just feel like they can have a great time and have a happy day. And I want to tell you one quick story about my friend Mikey. So Mikey is the one who got me to volunteer at Camp del Corazon. He's a serial volunteer. He volunteers all the time. And Mikey belays, that's holding the rope at the rock climbing wall for the kids. And there was an 8-year-old kid that tied into the rope. And Mikey said, okay, you ready? And the kid said, okay, I'm ready. And the kid started climbing the wall. And the kid got up, I don't know, about 3 feet. And he said, okay, I'm ready to come down. I'm done. And Mikey said, are you sure you want to go up a little farther? Because, from Mikey's perspective, this kid only got 3 feet off the ground, like literally could jump out down off the ground and, land right back where he started. And the kid said, no, I'm fine. I just want to come down right now. Mikey lowered him down and the kid jumped up in the air, was beaming. He said something to the effect of, oh my God, I've never been that high in my entire life. This is the best day ever. He was just so excited. And Mikey realized that he just enabled that child to make a small step, literally 3 feet, which changed that kid's life, made him, gave him that much joy. For Mikey, it was just 3 feet. And Mikey belayed that kid. He held the rope over the coming years. And eventually, the kid reached the top of the wall, which was really exciting. But just helping somebody achieve a little bit can bring so much joy and happiness and so much meaning for you. And it's brought meaning for me. And Mikey actually gave me a quote, I'll paraphrase, but when I help these kids, I feel like I have to be a better person too, which is just wonderful. So I found that these little things, and volunteering is not a little thing, it takes time, right? It takes a little bit of time, but just saying hi to people or listening to somebody, asking them how they're doing. These things make a big difference for others, expressing gratitude and so on. And they consistently bring me meaning to, and everybody who I know does them, it brings them meaning to. So if you're having trouble finding meaning in your life, this is a good way to go. And I think you'll find it, if you practice it more and more, it'll just bring more and more joy. And they've actually done studies on this. The amount of meaning you get, and in some cases happiness, goes up the more you help people and express gratitude. So if you're interested, Google meaning and helping people expressing gratitude. You'll find a bunch of studies on this. Okay, let's go on. Action number 3. All right, ask the question, why am I really complaining? Well, this one's a little bit tougher to explain. I learned this while I was back at Symantec, doing my work on Norton antivirus and so on, from an executive coach that was actually coaching me to, how to be a more effective engineer and executive. So, question for you. Do you ever complain over and over and over again for months at a time about the same things? you ever find yourself doing that? I don't know. Unless you're a human being, you probably do, right? People complain about things. You're frustrated with things. And there's certain things that really get on your nerves, right? Maybe your parents get on your nerves, okay? Well, I got to tell you, I did. I was in this mode where I was complaining over and over again for actually years. I complained for years. And what were my complaints? I said things like, I never get to work on anything interesting anymore. You know, I was very senior in my former job, and all of the interesting engineering work was done by more junior people. I was more of a figurehead later in my career. I also complained, I just sit in meetings all the time. And, sitting in meetings all the time, doing nothing interesting. And, I give boring presentations to customers, but it doesn't really give me any joy anymore. I'm not getting anything out of it. I complained for years. And then with the help of this coach and some of my colleagues, I realized that the things I was complaining about were not the real problem. So interesting. Okay, well, what was the real problem? Well, no one was forcing me to work on boring things. In fact, nobody even told me what to work on. I could work on whatever I wanted to, as it turns out. I could have dived into a newer area of work. I could have picked an area and said, I'm working on this. Fire me. What are you going to do? I mean, I was there for 25 years. They weren't going to fire me. I could have taken a new job, right? I could have just gone and gotten a new job. So complaining about being bored wasn't the real problem. My problem wasn't that my job was boring. My problem was, to be perfectly honest with you, that I was afraid of trying something new because I was afraid I was going to fail. I was afraid that I wasn't smart enough to go into a new field because what if I wasn't smart enough? I mean, I did this thing here for 21 years. I'm just lucky that I got as senior as I did because, I spent a lot of time. If you stay at a place long enough, you're going to rise in the ranks. I'm probably not smart enough to get that job somewhere else and do something interesting. And frankly, I was really scared about going into job interviews. And I hope you realize, all of you, my current students and former students who are going for job interviews, and you're like, oh my God, I'm really scared. What if I don't do well? I'll be judged. Let me tell you, it only gets harder when you're more senior and people expect more of you. And I really felt stressed about these things. This was the root cause of why I was complaining. So I stayed where I felt safe and I just complained over and over and over. I was unhappy. I'm not really, yes, I was unhappy. I'm a happy person in general, but this was an unhappy that I got. I tried to compartmentalize this and have fun in other parts of my life and be happy in other parts, but I was unhappy about this. But at least I didn't have to confront my fears of failing at something new. And that something new was those job interviews and in a new field. In fact, I didn't even recognize that those fears of failure and so on were driving my behavior. I didn't even recognize it. I just thought my job sucks. I hate it now. So I'm going to project here. This may not work for you, but it's worked for me and it's worked for many people I know. If you find yourself complaining over long periods of time about the same thing over and over, well, then maybe what you're complaining about is not the real problem. So maybe there are two possibilities. Possibility number one is you truly have a problem that's out of your control. And there are problems that are out of our control. I acknowledge that. What's out of your control? Things like, taxes, health problems that are incurable, things that are, really, out of our control. We can't do anything about. And if you have a problem like this and you're complaining about it, complaining doesn't help. In fact, it only makes you unhappy, right? If you can't do anything about it, just complaining about it just makes you unhappy. It doesn't solve anything. So what I try to do is when I find something that I believe is out of my control, I really make sure it is. And then I say, you know what, I'm not going to complain about it anymore. I'm going to focus on the things that I can control. And number two, if you do have a problem that you can affect, where you can make a change, you can actually take an action to acknowledge the real problem, the root cause, and do something about it. So things that are under your control. In that case, analyze your complaints, okay? Like for instance, I say my job is slowly crushing my soul, or my significant other is so blah, 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 whatever drives you crazy about your significant other. In that case, analyze those complaints and figure out what's really bothering you. So for instance, when you say your job is crushing your soul, does it mean afraid of trying something new, going back into the job market, learning how to interview again. What if you fail at that? Is that what's really going on? And is that what you have to confront, as opposed to that your job is bad? And if you're complaining about your significant other, is the real fear that you're afraid of being alone? What if you can't find somebody else that's as good as the partner you have? So you just stay with them and complain. So if you can acknowledge these things, then you can start taking actions that can potentially make you happier and more fulfilled in life. Okay. So then you can address the real problem, not the problem you're complaining about. And then, obviously it won't be 143 days with the real problem. So once I stopped fooling myself in my previous job, and I realized what was driving my complaints, I unlocked a new career. I got a whole new career. Okay. I learned all kinds of new skills. And I made some incredible friends that I still keep in touch with to this very day. All these things would never have happened if I hadn't acknowledged what was really driving my complaints. So if you have complaints in your life, maybe something you could think about, and it might help you to be a little happier. Okay, action number 4, and then we have one more after this. Action number 4 is be gritty. Be gritty. So when I was young, it's very colloquial, but when I was young, I thought that to be successful, you had to be really smart, or you had to go to a really good school, go to a Harvard or UCLA, we're really good, but go to a really good school, or maybe be super passionate about things. People who are super passionate, they're successful. But in fact, in my old age, and you can tell I don't have any hair anymore, I found that in fact, being smart is not a recipe necessarily for being successful. It doesn't hurt to be smart, but it certainly doesn't guarantee success in life. Again, success not just being financial success, but achieving what you want to achieve, making a difference in the way you want to make a difference, right? Going to a good school. I know people who've gone to great schools and have not accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. And I certainly know people who are passionate. And passion doesn't hurt, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Passion doesn't hurt, but being passionate alone is not enough to accomplish great things. In fact, the one thing that I know that helps accomplish great things is sandpaper. I'm sorry, it's being gritty. It's fine grit sandpaper. You can see that right there. Here, I can actually, let me, just in case you can't see. Okay, let's see. See, oh, hold on. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm backwards. Fine grit, see, it's sandpaper. Okay. All right, let's just go on because I think I talked too much there. All right. So what is grit? Grit is about, in a nutshell, not giving up. It's about perseverance, endurance, just having guts. You fail, you go back to it. You fail again, you go back to it again. You just don't give up. And I asked myself before I gave this talk, is this something that people just are or something they can practice? And I think it may be somewhere in the middle. And it's not obvious to me that everybody can be gritty, but I think you can try and practice it and get better at it. So let's talk about it. So I want to tell you about Kim. Kim is a former student of mine. Kim wasn't a typical student. Kim didn't take my class her freshman year at UCLA when she was 18 years old. This is Kim. Kim is an actor, or was an actor. She studied theater at Yale. And basically, after working in the field for a number of years, Kim was reasonably successful. She was on Grey's Anatomy. She was on Mad Men. She's on a number of other shows. I think maybe in some movies and theater and so on. But Kim felt like she was treading water. She wasn't accomplishing what she wanted to accomplish. And she remembered that during the undergrad years, she took a class in computer science at Yale that she sort of enjoyed, because she sort of enjoyed math and computer science. And so at 30 years old, Kim decided that she wanted to change her trajectory. So she basically applied to a bunch of schools. All the schools told her, hey, you have a degree in theater. You want to get into computer science? We can't do that. And she said, well, fine, then I'll just double down and I'll take courses. And she went to UCLA Extension. She took my class, CS32, as an extension student. She did fantastic, and she took CS33, the course that comes after my class at UCLA. Remember, again, at 30 years old, while pursuing an acting career at the same time, she took these classes. And then finally, she had enough background that she could actually apply and get into a college. And she went to UCLA, spent 2 years working as hard as she could to get her master's degree. Kim, at age 30, started a new field in a totally different area, had to go and take basically, like extension classes to get a master's degree. And finally, she applied to a bunch of jobs. She applied to Twitter, did a horrible interview, got rejected, and then kept going and interviewed with Google and got in. Now, I think many of you, if like me, like everybody, are struggling with life. There's challenges in life, as we've talked about. And if you think about Kim, next time you're struggling, think about, hey, she at 30 years old changed her life. She's working in France right now for the Google Arts and Cultures team. She's living in Europe, having not about a great time in COVID in Europe, but she's changed her trajectory through sheer grit. Through sheer grit, you can do it too. So just one story. I want to share another story, very personal story for me. It's about one of my very close friends, Dan. So Dan was studying philosophy at a UC. I won't name the UC. He wanted this to be a little bit more anonymous. And Dan ran into some bad people and started doing things that took his life off the normal path. He got into things like opium and drugs and alcohol, and it consumed his life for a while. And with the help of his girlfriend at the time, he managed to get over this. It was amazing that he was able to do so. And he went back to school and finished his philosophy degree. Now, Dan finally finished his philosophy degree, his undergrad degree, his bachelor's degree at age 28 after getting over the drugs, dropping out, going back. Now, at that time, Dan was trying to find a job and was having trouble finding a job with his degree. And so we chatted. And I said, I love teaching. How about you and some of our other friends? We go sit downstairs in my house and I'll teach you how to program. And Dan said, how to program? Really? Can we do that? Can we learn enough to get a job? I said, yeah, I think we can. And we spent about a year, 3 nights a week, every week, learning how to program and doing, he did projects, spent all of his time programming. And he learned the C++ programming language. He learned Java. And I remember going to his house, and he actually had a monitor with little stickies on it saying, don't forget to program, you can do it, like little stickies to encourage himself so that he just would not give up. And he did a bunch of interviews and finally got a job at a high-tech company. And he is now doing fantastic. He has 1 child and 1 child on the way, working in the high-tech industry as an engineering manager, did software engineering for a while before doing that, all starting at 28. That's for a year of practice, all the time, just constantly programming, asking questions, not being embarrassed about asking questions, just doing whatever it took. Dan did it. And I got to say, it's an inspiration to me that he could do this. We're very close friends, and I'm just really happy for him. But it's another example of how grit, at any time in your life, you can change your life. You can really make an impact on your life. All right. So I'm very emotional about Dan. I love Dan and his wife. They're awesome. Now, I've been pretty successful in life. I think probably, many of you think, oh, Carey's very successful. He's got it really good. And everything's been pretty easy for him in life. And I bet a lot of students don't think about how I got there. Now, I want to talk about a time of my life that was actually pretty difficult, and share a little bit about myself with you. Let's talk about my novel. So after college, when my soul was sucked from my heart, I don't know, do you have a soul in your heart? From all the books I had to read in high school and college that I hated all those books. It took me about 5 years to detoxify on reading and start reading novels again. And I read novels, started reading novels. Yes, I like thrillers and mysteries and treasure hunting novels and stuff. And I just read these novels and they were just really bad. And I thought, I've got to be able to do better than this. So I sat down one night and I just started writing. And then I wrote the next night and I wrote the next night. And I spent 7 years or so writing a novel. And but eventually I got 100 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages, got over 300 pages. I was pretty excited. And after 8 years of actually about 8 years of writing, not 7 years, but 8 years of writing, I had produced a masterpiece. A masterpiece. It was just brilliant. Well, at least in my own head it was. And I was sure they were going to make a movie of it. And by the way, nobody's optioned the movie rights yet. So if you are a producer and you're watching this and you are interested in just a fantastic story, yeah, contact me. Okay, you can reach me. I'll just keep going now. Okay, so I was sure they were going to make a movie. It was a masterpiece. And so I was ready to get published. I was just ready to get published. I was so excited. I was sure that, a great publisher is going to want to publish it tomorrow. And then, of course, I looked into publishing. And you know what? Turns out that to get a novel published, how do you do that? Well, you got to go to an agent, a literary agent. Because what happens is these literary agents, they talk to the publishers. They're like the filter. They actually read the book and say, oh, I like this. I'm going to represent this because I have credibility with the publisher. Publishers will not talk to individual authors, even if their book is a masterpiece like mine was. Masterpiece in quotation marks, that is. So you have to get a publisher to like your novel. And then hold on, let's do that again. They then pitch your novel to the publishers. Okay. And if you can't find an agent that likes your novel, well, then you don't get it published. But my novel was great, so it wasn't going to be a problem. So I started sending out emails to all of these agents, and they're all in a directory. There's tons of agents in a directory. You can find them online. And so how difficult could it be? I figured, a week or two, I'd have an agent landed. So I would like to share with you some of the wonderful responses I got back from the agents that I sent my book to. Hi, Carey. I read your book and saw a lot of promise and a lot of problems. Okay. Well, you know what? That's not going to discourage me. I can do this again. We are afraid we are not able to offer you representation for this project. Okay, I'll try again. Another email I got. I'm afraid we're going to pass on requesting your work. Okay. How about another one? We don't think it's right for the specific talents of the people working at our company. Well, whose talents is it right for? I don't know. Okay, well, I sent out another email. Unfortunately, I don't feel I'm quite the right agent for your project. Okay, well, who is the right agent? Another one. Ultimately, I was not as drawn in by the narrative. What are you talking about? It's a masterpiece. Here's another one. After careful consideration, we have decided not to pursue your project. Okay, all right, let's just keep going here. I sent out another email. Unfortunately, it doesn't match what we're looking for at this time. We hope other agents feel differently. Yeah, me too. There's another one. I won't ask you to grant me more reading time because I'm not feeling strongly compelled further. By the way, this is soul crushing for me at the time, okay? Every one of these is like another soul crushing moment. Here's another one. Unfortunately, after careful review, we have decided that the Bradford Literary Agency might not be the right agency for this project. Their loss. Another one. I'm afraid I wouldn't be the best representative for it. Yeah, I think I've heard that before. And finally, the Florentine was so bad, I wouldn't even use it to line my cat's litter box. Okay, that one I made up because I thought it'd be funny. Nobody actually said that. They were all very nice, but that's what it felt like to me at the time. So let me sum this up for you because you're probably wondering, oh, he received 12 rejections. No, I pitched for a year. I got over 200 rejections. Most of them never even responded to me. Those were like the responses. That was actually the good stuff. I actually got something back. I was so excited when they opened the emails. And then I was just like crestfallen. I did 6 rewrites over that time. I call that grit. that was my definition of grit. I just did not give up and I was miserable. I felt horrible. I felt like I was totally rejected. All of my work, this hard work that I'd spent 7, 8 years, whatever it was, on my time writing. And then I got this email. I just wanted to let you know that I'm a little more than halfway through the Florentine and I'm really enjoying it. Please let me know ASAP if you get any other offers of representation. And I won't go through the rest, but eventually I did get the novel published through, a publisher and didn't self-publish it, and it is now on the market. So I think you get the point. I failed 200 times before I succeeded once. And those 200 times were super difficult. I mean, I was really bummed about this. It was something I felt rejected. I felt like the most rejection I've ever had in my entire life during that year. But most people only see the end product. They only saw that, yeah, Carey published a novel. So when you're going up and trying to do something that seems difficult, remember, there are potentially 100, 200 failures in front of you, but you can get through them. You can accomplish anything if you just put in the time. So what's the moral of the story? If you're gritty, you can change your life trajectory. It doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter whether you had problems before. You can change your life trajectory. I truly believe this. I've seen it in my life over and over. Or at least publish a best-selling novel, which has not had a movie made yet. Best-selling, sorry, in my family, just to be clear. I don't want to lie about anything. Okay, we're almost done. We have number 5. Start with the outcome. Now, all the things I've talked about so far are things that are about being happy, accomplishing things in your life, finding meaning in your life. This one is actually dual purpose. This one is dual purpose. This could be used if you want to create a startup, for those of you that want to do that. This could also be used to help you out in your own personal lives. So it's going to be a little bit of a curveball, but let's just go with it. So what is an outcome? An outcome is what your customer, if you're doing a startup, let's say, what your customer wants to achieve and how they measure success. Okay, how do they measure success? How do they decide how they measure success? Okay, another way of looking at an outcome is what you want to achieve and how you measure success. Okay, so this can be applied personally or it can be applied in a business context, at a job, or for a startup, for instance. Okay, so let's talk about it. So whether you're creating a startup or just want to be more effective day to day, I found, and again, it doesn't work for everybody, but I found it helpful to use what's called an outcome-based approach. And that, of course, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo words, so I'll explain what I mean by that. So what does that even mean? Well, I'm going to give you an example that involves rubber gloves and a very funny person like this, although this is actually really a serious example that I believe actually did work. But I like that image with the guy with the rubber gloves. So let's just continue. Okay, I'm a little bit silly, like I said. Without further ado, let's say you have been a surgeon's assistant and your job is, after surgeries are completed, to clean the tools. Okay. And again, this example, I believe, is a real life example, but I'm telling a story, a narrative about it, just so you get the idea. So you're a surgeon's assistant, you've been cleaning these tools, and you use a soap. Okay, and the soap is currently 98% effective. So it removes 98% of germs. And you think, because of your long experience somehow with soaps, maybe your grandfather or grandmother made soap, I don't know, that you think you can make a better soap so that, in fact, you'll have fewer post-operative infections with these surgical tools. They won't carry bacteria or germs after they're cleaned, because 98%, that's not that good. So you come up with a new improved liquid detergent, which is 99.95%. That's your goal. That's what you think you want to do. You don't come up with it yet. That's what you think you can do. And that's going to just change the world, because, boy, then you're going to reduce the germs significantly. Okay. So you start formulating a new soap. That's the mad scientist person who's formulating new soap. A little bit scary looking, but that's okay. It looks like Doc Brown. And guess what? You succeed, or they succeed. In fact, you're even more successful. You're not 99.95 successful. You're 99.99 successful. This is the best darn soap that's ever been infected. It's going to make those surgical tools so gleaming, so safe. Nobody's ever going to have an infection again. But then you try to sell the product and nobody buys it. And you're wondering to yourself, why? My product is so much better. It's perfect, almost perfect. This happens to a lot of people, happens to a lot of startups. Okay. And you might ask yourself why. Like, why do 99% of startups fail? Okay. That's most startups. But there's a better way. And I'm going to share it with you. And it's actually, that's not easy, but it's not difficult either. It's something you can practice, you can get better at it. So let's imagine that instead of just inventing a new soap or improving your soap, you went and talked to a bunch of surgeons and surgeons' assistants. And you asked a question. You said, hey, what outcomes are you trying to achieve? And the first surgeon says, well, I want to prevent post-operative infections because, I don't want my patients to get sick after the fact with a bacterial infection. And you're like, yeah, I got that. I know why. I got that. I got this great soap. But you quiet yourself down and you ask another question. You say, okay, what outcomes are you trying to achieve, sir? And the person says, I don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning. Okay, you say, okay, let me ask another person. And the other person says, I want to stop getting cut while washing. One of the other surgeon's assistants says, I always get cut, but I don't like to get cut. That's not good. Washing is such a pain. I don't want to do that anymore. And so you start thinking to yourself, notice what they didn't say. None of them said, I want a better soap. They said they didn't want to get cut. And they said they didn't want to spend a lot of time washing, these surgical tools because they want to spend more time, doing surgeries and so on. They didn't say, I want a better soap. So let's ask the question, were the customer outcomes met with our soap that's 99.95 or 99% effective? Well, preventing post-op infections? Yeah, it's awesome at that. What about spending a lot of time cleaning? Nope, doesn't solve that at all. You just produce another soap, takes just as long to clean. What about not getting cut while washing? Well, it doesn't solve that either, because frankly, you still have to wash with soap. Now, what would happen if instead, without thinking about soap or anything at all, we started by focusing on the outcomes first? What if we think about the outcomes that our customers are trying to achieve? What were they? I want to prevent post-op infections. Okay, that's an outcome. I don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning because that takes me away from other things. I have to hire people to do the cleaning, or I have to do it myself, and I can't spend that time doing things like operations that can save people's lives. And the last one, I want to stop getting cut while washing, right? What if that's one of the outcomes? Well, if we think about those outcomes and we don't worry about the current solutions, we might come up with a really creative out-of-the-box solution like this one. What if instead of having to wash your tools, they were shipped to you pre-sterilized or pre-sanitized in bags that you could just open and use immediately? And when you were done with them, you wouldn't have to wash them at all. You just throw them in a bag and send them back so that you don't do any washing. What about the outcomes here? Well, we prevent post-operative infections because these things can be industrial sanitized, right? You can go and bake them under UV light. You can go and wash them with triple soap, whatever you want. Nobody has to spend any time cleaning. And nobody's going to get cut anymore. This is what happens when you focus on the outcomes. When you focus on the outcomes, you can come up with super creative ideas that aren't like the ideas that other people have had in the past. Okay. And in fact, in my time at Google, we did this kind of thing, and it just made a huge difference because we focused on the outcomes. We asked customers, what are you trying to accomplish? Not how do you do it now? So let's apply this to your daily routine or my daily routine. How often do you ask yourself a question like this? What outcome am I trying to achieve? I'll tell you something, when I was a student, especially, and even early in my career, midway through my career, I never said, what does success look like? What does the outcome look like at the end of this quarter or month or project? I never asked myself that. I didn't ask stakeholders what success looked like for them if I worked for them or did something for them. I just never did that. I never even thought of it. I just went to the next class or did my next assignment. I didn't really think too much about it. How often do you ask yourself, how is success measured? Is success measured in how fast I can accomplish something or whether I don't get cut? Like, how do people measure success in those outcomes? You ever ask yourself that? Do you ever ask yourself, are you thinking about the soap or are you thinking about the desired outcomes? So this is something to think about. Don't think about the current solution to the problem. Think about what people need to have solved for themselves. And then you might think of a really out-of-the-box solution. Living life with outcomes in mind can make all the difference. And I got to tell you, every time I do a new project now, before I start the project, I think about what are the outcomes that will make this successful? How will people judge it? The people who I'm going to deliver this to, how are they going to decide whether this is successful or not? Every single thing I do of consequence in my life, I think about this. And it really helps because you will come up with really interesting things that nobody else came up with because nobody thinks about this. This is the dirty little secret. Nobody ever thinks about this, but it's great. It's not dirty, but it's exciting. So I'm often told by students, and it's an honor to me, that they really enjoy my class. They get a lot out of it. And these are some pictures from some of my classes. You can see my Pop-Tarts. Let's see, where are my Pop-Tarts there? Over there, I got my Pop-Tarts there. We once had a toaster fire. We won't talk about that right now, but generally speaking, everything's fine with the Pop-Tarts. Here's another class. You can see the students are pretty happy. They're having a good time. We have a lot of fun. I think my students enjoy class because I really think about the outcomes. I focus on the outcomes. What outcomes do we want to achieve with my students? Well, I think they want to learn something useful. I don't think they just want to learn something to learn something. They want to learn something that they think is going to add value to their lives. And so, in fact, one of the things I do is I tell all my students, here's why this is going to add value for you. This is why if you learn this, you're going to be happy that you learned it. It'll help you with job interviews. You can solve this interesting problem with it. I focus on that because I know it's an outcome students care about. I know my students don't want to feel dumb or lost. This is something that really resonates with me because I was not a smart kid. My mom actually had me tested because it was going to hold me back because I was actually so slow as a kid. And I've always felt a little bit slow, actually, even to this day. And so I really empathize with students who feel like, I don't want to feel dumb. I don't want to feel like the only one that's lost in the room. And so a lot of people tell me they like my lectures because I try to make complex topics easy to understand and simple. It's something an outcome I try to focus on. And finally, I think an outcome I want to solve for that my students care about is they want to enjoy the experience. Look, if anybody tells you that learning isn't hard, they're crazy. Learning is super difficult. And so if we can make learning just a little bit easier by having a little bit more fun, well, then it's going to make that outcome, it's going to make it all the better for those students. So I think about outcomes every time I teach. I think about outcomes in life, and I hope you can think about outcomes too. It's all about the outcomes. And I hope today I've achieved those outcomes for you. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And again, it's an honor to be here. So thank you.
Cool. All right, Carey, then I really appreciate, thank you so much, Carey. We would like to acknowledge Disney legend Marty Sklar, whom this award is named after. Marty was an alumni scholar and helped us revive this award in 2010. After graduating UCLA, Marty spent his entire career working for the Walt Disney Corporation alongside Walt Disney himself and was involved in the creation and opening of every Disney theme park around the world. Tonight, we say thank you to his wife, Leah, and daughter, Leslie, for attending tonight, and thank you for sharing Marty with us. With that, I would like to officially introduce myself. My name is Saman Andalib, and as Vice President of the Alumni Scholars Club, I would like to officially present Professor Nachenberg with the 2020-2021 My Last Lecture Award on behalf of the UCLA Alumni Association and the Sklar family and the Alumni Scholars Club. Thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you so much, Professor Nachenberg.
Hi, everybody.